an original piece by me. I wrote that one myself. Welcome back to another video. This video is one that you guys have been asking me to make for quite a long time. Quite a little while now. Today in this video, I'm going to show you right there, how to make realistic sounding guitar melodies without even ever having to touch a guitar. Although it is one of the hardest instruments to digitally recreate, it is still doable, to some extent. I use FL Studio, but all the tips in this video can apply to any other DAW as well. First things first, you gotta make sure you pick a solid sound to start with. So pick a good VST or a good guitar one-shot sample, because you can't start out with something that sounds bad and magically make it sound good. I'm gonna first start out with giving you guys some tips on electric guitar melodies. I'm gonna be using Labs by Spitfire Audio, which is, if not the best, it's one of the best free plugins that you can get. We're going to use the Electric Guitars Bank sample thing and the Rock Plucks preset. Before we start going buck wild, clicking in notes and trying to make random melodies, you got to think philosophically about how the guitar actually works. A standard guitar is going to have 6 strings tuned to E, A, D, G, B, E. So in your piano roll, that's going to look like this. E, A, D, G, B, E. But the high E string keeps on going, obviously. So we'll add another octave E. So this is pretty much the real estate that we have to work with when we're making guitar melodies. Because of the way a guitar is tuned, you're never just going to have a simple triad chord like this. As you can hear already, that sounds a little bit unnatural. Let's say I'm playing a G chord, for example. This G chord has G, the root, and the next note down is this D. So in the piano roll, it's going to look like this. Notice how big of a gap there is here. We're not just playing a simple like major third, we have a very big space because of the way a guitar is set up. And then if we keep going, you'll notice we have another G. Gives us this very crazy, very stretched out chord shape. Then we have a B, D, and we can finally end it off with a G. And now we have... Obviously, the piano roll still doesn't sound very realistic, but the voicing is now accurate to what a real guitar would be. Obviously, that's a lot to think about every time you want to make a chord. So the formula for taking a normal triad and turning it into a guitar version of the chord, we're going to take the middle note and move it up an octave. Then we're going to duplicate the root note, move that up an octave, do the same thing again, and then finally just copy over the fifth and move that up an octave. And now we have the guitar version. You can also leave out the highest note if you want to as well, and that'll still sound fine. But as you can hear, when you just play this how it is, it sounds like you're just playing a big piano chord. It doesn't sound very guitar-esque. So I've found that the best method for programming guitar melodies is to make arpeggios. An arpeggio is when you take the notes of a chord and play them individually like this. So if you make some chords generally following what I just showed you guys, obviously you can break the rules. See right here I have some 2 notes that are close to each other. We can take these chords and then just move them over so they're arpeggiated. But what I'm going to do is switch these 2 notes. But now we have to go back to thinking about the guitar philosophically again. If we play this for real, it sounds like this. And notice what happens here. Our 2 highest notes are on the same string. That means that they cannot be playing at the same time. So when this note starts playing, this one has to stop playing. So let's highlight both of these and then hit Control L. The other notes we don't really have to mess with because they're not on the same string. But if you see notes that are close together like this or like these 2, there's a pretty good chance that they're on the same string, so definitely think about that. The next major thing we have to do to get this to sound actually realistic is mess around with the velocities. When you play guitar, you're not playing every single note the exact same volume. That would just sound super weird. If I think about the way I play this naturally, I'm playing higher velocity, lower velocity, higher velocity, lower velocity. So let's replicate that here. Thinking about the fact that the guitar is a human instrument played by human beings who are not perfect, not robots, the timing is not always going to be perfect. So we do not want to have everything right on the line, super quantized like this. We want to add some of those imperfections in there. So hold down Alt and then click and drag things over a little bit, just ever so slightly. Move some of them back, move some of them forward, whatever you think makes it more human sounding. And then after I've done all that, what I like to do is hit Alt and then R, and that just randomizes the velocities just to mix it up a little bit more at the end. So just to spice this bad boy up a little bit, we're going to add a couple melody notes in there, but you don't want to go too crazy because if you think about it, if we're doing something like this, I can't actually play that on guitar. Maybe separately, but definitely not while playing the chord and trying to play this at the same time. Not happening. So make sure to keep it realistic. Just like a one-noter kind of thing right here. And that right there sounds pretty good. Remember that these are on the same string, so we got to cut one off before we play the other one. One thing a lot of people do that sounds pretty good is making slide notes. Just a very subtle, short little slide at the end, something like this. And it kind of helps to add that little transition sound from one chord to the other. So the way you do that is press S and then click here. But for whatever reason, mine doesn't work. I think it's just certain plugins aren't really compatible with the slide notes, but if you're using one-shots, it'll work fine. Another thing that you can do is double up on notes at the beginning. So I can maybe add this in here. That sounds very cool, and it's very doable on the guitar. That's really the main unifying idea here with everything that I'm teaching in this video. You just have to think about the way a guitar is actually played. It's the exact same thing if you're trying to program realistic sounding drums. Video on that up there. Most likely you're not going to have an open hi-hat and a closed hi-hat at the same time because that's physically impossible. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, just always have in the back of your mind, is this really possible on a guitar? But don't get too caught up on it. If it sounds good, it is good. And now the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to electric guitar melodies is putting an amp sim on this bad boy. So we're going to do Control L, that assigns it to a mixer track, and then we're just going to put some sort of amp sim. It can be guitar rig, it can be whatever else you want. Jazz amp, basic jazz, super versatile preset. And now this bad boy sounds like it could have been played with a real guitar. That's pretty good. Give yourself a round of applause. That sounds good. But now you're thinking to yourself, hey man, although that is pretty epic and cool, how do I do the same thing with acoustic guitar? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to show you right now. So I'm going to do this with just like your run-of-the-mill plugin. I'm going to go with Expand, and we're going to go with one of my favorite presets, which is in guitars, obviously. Picked nylon strings. So the same melody with the nylon string sounds like this. Whether you're doing acoustic or electric guitar melodies, most of the same rules are still going to apply. And the great thing about having this all be MIDI is we can just adjust the key willy-nilly, which is wonderful because you can't really do that with real guitar. You just have to re-record the whole thing. But I'm actually going to show you guys how to do a little bit more of a strummy guitar pattern here. So let's start off the same way here, right? We got some chords going on, but just like this. When you think about it, it's not even actually possible to play all these notes at the exact same time. The most you can do, unless you somehow have an extra finger, is 5 notes. Because you only have 5 fingers, I hope. If you think about the way you strum a chord in general, is technically kind of an arpeggio because you're hitting each of the notes individually as you go down the strings. FL Studio does have a strumming feature. We can hit Alt and then S. You can adjust this to your liking if you want a really long strum like this, or a really short one like this. But again, same vibe, right? We're not playing all of the notes with the exact same volume. When we strum a chord, the loudest notes are going to be the ones we hit first. These higher strings are kind of played really softly because the lower strings are struck so hard. So if we apply that here, we can start with the lowest note and then go down like this. It's going to take some adjusting and changing of things to get it exactly how you want it to sound. And another thing that I should mention is that even when you use the inbuilt strumming tool, you still want to go in and manually adjust some of these to make it sound a little bit more human. You can try to also add some upstrokes in there. As you can imagine, that's going to be just like the opposite. So we're going to start with the same chord, but instead on the strummerizer, we're going to go the other way like this, and then just apply the opposite velocity theory, which is that the bottom strings now we're going to be striking the hardest, and the top strings are going to be the quietest. And generally, since you're coming back up with the pick rather than striking down, the velocity in general is just going to be a little bit lower. And it doesn't sound great or anything. It's not a super accurate strumming vibe, but that's about as close as you're going to get to a strumming pattern before you actually learn how to play guitar. You right there, talking to you. Adding some samples into the mix can actually help your melodies quite a lot. I bet there's some kid out there that just has like guitar string sliding noises, percussive slaps, or different things like that that are guitar noises without actually playing notes. And if you can incorporate some of those, it'll make your guitar melodies a lot better as well. But the final thing that I recommend if you're making an acoustic guitar melody is to add some reverb onto it. But not just any run-of-the-mill reverb, a reverb that actually sounds realistic, like it's in a real room. I like to use a plugin called TrueVerb. It's probably my favorite reverb plugin. They have a bunch of different presets. I'll go to the New York Room preset. There'll be a link in the description to TrueVerb if you want to go check it out. But yeah, so now you also know how to make a very accurate, very realistic sounding acoustic guitar pattern. Anyways, boys and girls, that is pretty much going to do it for me in this video here today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope you guys learned a thing or two, or maybe even 3, about making guitar melodies. That just rhymed. Dr. Seuss. If you'd like to check out any of my social media or drum kits or any other things like that, link will be down in the description below. Also, go to the comment section and comment your favorite color. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time.